Hello and welcome to my channel. If you've been here before, welcome back. My name is Alfonso Peluso and I'm a Studio Associate Professor in the College of Architecture at IIT, and I'm also adjunct faculty at Columbia College Chicago in the Interior Architecture program. Shout out to all my students. I hope you're doing well. I'm doing well again. It's another sunny day in Chicago here in late summer. Alright, today we are looking at setting up a simple Rhino scene for some basic Rhino rendering. And this video is part of a series that looks at Rhino basics. So I'm just spitting these out. We've been looking at Rhino modeling techniques like extrude, loft, sweep, revolve. Now we're going to get into creating some really cool Rhino renderings. Just no plugin, no V-Ray, no Enscape, just right in Rhino. So I hope you will enjoy this series. Alright, so let's get started. Here's our outline. So the first part is just to build a basic 3D model. So we're just going to build what you see on the left here. A floor, a ceiling, and some columns. So let's just get right to it. So I'm going to open up a file, a new file, and for this file, I'm going to use large objects, inches. So I'm thinking about building scale, something larger than a truck. And I'm going to work in inches, or I can work in feet, either one of those. All right, let's go with feet this time. All right, go to our perspective view. I want to set my grid up. I was working in a space there that I modeled that was 20 feet wide by 40 feet deep. So I'll go to DOC and I'm going to go to grid and I'm going to set my grid line count to be 40. That's 40 feet. Minor grid lines every 1 foot. Major grid lines every 10 feet is fine. Snap spacing will be every 1 feet. Alright. Alright, so let's get into our layers here. So let's make a floor layer. Make that current, and I'm going to draw a box. And I'm just using my grid snap here. So this is every large or every heavy grid line is 10 feet. So this is 20 by 40, and I'm going to make that -6 inches. So I always like to put the top of my floor at 0 and extrude it downward. Alright, so that's that. Let's make our columns. Make this layer current. Again, I can use a box command. Snap it. I'll actually snap it here to this grid. Just make it a foot by 10 feet tall. I'll go ahead and copy that. Okay, so now I'm going to put one right at the middle. So I'm just copying one right to the middle of the floor there. And I'll take these 3, copy these. I'll go from this end to this other grid line over here. Okay. And then I'm going to leave out the middle ones. I'm going to leave the space open. Alright, let's make a ceiling layer. And I'm just going to copy this from the bottom, snap it to the top of that column, put it on the ceiling layer. Okay, let's look at this in a shaded view. Alright, so this is what we have to work with. Perfect. Alright, I'm just going to save this. Alright, so that's part 1. If we look at our outline here, part 1 was basic 3D model. Okay, next thing is make a camera. Why is it important to make cameras now after you have a basic 3D model? Well, you want to focus on what you see through the camera, and you want to add your detail and your lighting to what you see through the camera. I see too many times students just adding way too much detail, and then that detail doesn't end up in the rendering, and that doesn't do anyone any good. Alright, so let's make a camera. Okay, so what we can do, the easiest way, I think, in Rhino, and I've experimented with this quite a bit. The easiest way I think to make a camera is just start in a perspective view. You can either start to zoom in and get close to what you want, and then edit that camera from there. So how do you edit the camera from there? Okay, I'm going to double click on the word perspective, and I'm just going to all three viewports so that I can see my model in all three or all four viewports. With the perspective view current, okay, that's super important. With the perspective view current, I'm going to use the F6, okay, the F6, or the command underscore camera, okay. Let's try that. Let's make sure that works. Underscore camera. Okay, so I can click on hide, or I can do that again and click on show. Okay, so that shows me my camera. Alright, so from there I can manipulate this camera. So you see it in all four viewports, or all three viewports I should say. You won't see it in the perspective view. Now if I go to properties, if I go to the properties tab, what I'm going to want to do is I'm going to make that perspective view current. Okay, again, that's so important. Making the perspective view current. I'm going to change the lens length so that this is the angle of the camera, whether it's a wide angle camera or not. So I'm going to change the lens length from 50. I'm going to change that lens length to 28. That gives me a really wide angle camera, and I'll look at that again. I'll change it back to 50. And then you see it zooms in really close, and then I'll change it back to 28 and it zooms out. Okay, so I'm getting this wide angle camera. Alright, so I'm going to move this camera now. I'm going to take this camera and I'm going to move it closer, and I'm also going to change the angle of this camera. So you see there's all these points. So I guess what I want to do right now is I want to refer you to a video that I'm going to link at the end of this tutorial, which just is all about cameras. Everything that you need to know about cameras and saving camera views and making snapshots. So that's a really good video for you to go ahead and watch. Alright, so we've got our camera set up. Alright, so what's next? One thing I do want to look at is the height of the camera and the target. And if I make the perspective view current, I can look at that. So the Z location for the camera, I like to make that pretty dramatic. So 4.5 feet, 4.5 feet. And I'm going to set that for both. We just set that for the camera, and now we're going to set that for the target. So 4.5. Okay. Alright, we're moving along good here. So what's next here? So next thing, we made our basic 3D model, we set up our camera. Next thing is to set up the sun. So if you type in the command sun in Rhino, you're going to get this sun window that pops up, and I like to dock this in with the rest of my tabs here on the right. Then we're going to need to turn on the sun, and then we're going to set it to manual control. Now to see the sun in the viewport, we need to make this viewport rendered. Okay, now it's rendered, and now I can change the position of that sun. So you see I'm changing the sun position in plan, and I can also change its height and elevation. How far do I want it to go into the space? So right now it's northeast, so it's an early morning sun. Okay, got that set. Alright, so there's our sun. Again, I'll put a link at the end of this video that's gonna really go in depth into cameras and sun and saving the states, saving the locations of the sun in relationship to the camera. So that's one you're going to want to go ahead and watch. Okay. Alright, so sun. Next is our background color. Okay, I want to set the background color, and I'm going to set that just to represent a sky right now, so a light blue. Okay, let's make this perspective window large. So we're going to do that under render. Okay, so under our render tab. If you don't have the render tab, I don't know, that we type in the command render. That's going to make an actual rendering. So if you don't have the render tab, if we go to render, now I get myself into trouble here. Alright, so I don't know. I guess it's default. So this says rendering. I'm sure someone at home is screaming about where to get that, and I bet you can do it over here. Yep. So you click on the little gear, and it's rendering. Okay, little gear in the upper right, and make sure rendering is checked on. All right, we figured that out. Perfect. Okay, back to the color. So there's a backdrop, and my default solid color was equal to white. So I'm going to click on that, and I'm going to just set that to a light blue color. All right. Desaturate that a little bit. Okay, so there's my solid color. So some of you might not be seeing that displayed in your viewport. Okay, mine wasn't initially displayed in my viewport. So to see that, I go to my display tab. Okay, so again, the upper right, the gear, making sure your display tab is on. Under general settings background, this might have been a solid color, might have been solid color white. So I want to make sure that this is using the render settings, and then that's going to show me that background. Alright, we are moving along great here. Okay, so background color, viewport display background color, we just set that. Okay, let's look at resolution and quality. Okay, so under our rendering tab. Okay, so resolution, whenever I talk about resolution, I'm referring to pixels. And a basic starting point is just high def. So high def rendering is 1920 by 1280. Those are both high def values for pixels. So 1920 wide by 1280 tall, that's high def. And then quality, I know a lot of people want to do final. Good quality is good enough. Alright, it takes long enough and it's good enough. Alright, so 1920 by 1280, good quality. Alright, so how do we render this? We just click on the little render tab or type in render enter. Alright, it's thinking about it, getting the pop-up. And now it's starting to render. So I'm pretty excited about this series, about looking at making really good renderings in Rhino. I think it's underrated. Rhino is underrated, but it has a really good rendering engine that came with Rhino 6. I'm curious to see what happens in Rhino 7, which is coming out here soon. But we're going to look at how we can make some realistic renderings inside of Rhino. And we'll do this over probably about, I'd say, at least 3 videos. This one just setting up our basic scene. The next one will be some basic materials, and then lighting, and then some fine tuning of the rendering. So I'm pretty excited about this. Alright, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to save this. I'm going to save it as two images, one as a JPEG and one as a PNG. So one thing that I wanted to look at as the bonus was transparent background. So if I save this as a PNG right now, it won't be transparent because I didn't have the transparent background on. Shame on me, but I wanted to show you that. So let me go ahead and save this, and then in Photoshop I'll explain why I would why I would essentially want two versions, a JPEG and a PNG. Alright, so I'm going to save this as my JPEG. So the JPEG will not have a transparent background. Okay. And now I'm pretty sure I have to re-render this. Okay, just can't click transparent background and save it as a PNG because it's already been rendered out. So I'm clicking transparent background and I'm going to re-render that. Didn't take that long, it took about a minute and it gave us some time to chat. So while that's rendering, alright, so if you haven't subscribed to my YouTube channel, please go ahead, search me up, Alfonso Peluso on YouTube. Click on the big red subscribe button. Then once you've subscribed, click on the bell and choose all to receive all the notifications. My next goal here is 7,000 subscribers. Won't that be cool? Thank you for helping me make that goal of 7,000. Also, I love connecting with you guys on Instagrams. Many of you have sent me message. Did I say Instagrams with an S? Well, I'm from Chicago. We tend to do that. All right, shout out to Ali Reza Mohammedi.bn. Sorry if I butchered your name there, but shout out to you. Thanks for following me and liking a video on Instagram. So follow me on Instagram at my first name underscore, so my first name Alfonso underscore my last name Peluso. Look forward to connecting with you. Alright, so you see with a transparent background, it renders out with this black background. It's still using the blue color to create the initial image. Alright, so let's go ahead and save this image. Save this, and I need to make sure that I save this as a PNG. Alright, so I have one with the blue background and one without the blue background. And I'll show you what I like to do with that in Photoshop. Alright, let's go ahead and open up Photoshop now. Some people have asked me, why do I have Photoshop 2015? I don't know, I just really love that version. 25 years of Photoshop in 2015, so I get really excited about having that version. I guess I should, with 2020, it's 30 years of Photoshop, but I don't think they displayed that in a nice splash screen like that. Okay, so let's open up both of these files. So we have the JPEG. Okay, there's the JPEG with the blue background. If I go to main menu image, image size, I'm going to see that that's 1920 by 1280 pixels. Okay, and I'm going to select all of this, which I did that with a Control A. I'm going to copy it with a Control C, and then I'm going to open the transparent version of it, and I'm going to paste it in with a Control V. Okay, there you have it, layers 1 and 0, and I can decrease this. So now I have control over how much of that background. I do want that background to fade away to the back, but I also want to see a little bit of it. And we'll get into some backgrounds as we keep going in this video series. Alright, we covered it all. My head's going to pop up. You click on my head to subscribe to my YouTube channel. The video is going to pop up in the upper right here. That's going to look at snapshots and Rhino cameras. And then in the lower right, I'm going to have another video that looks at some rendering Rhino basics. So if you enjoyed this video and you found it helpful, let me know in the comments, give me a thumbs up, and I'll see you on the next one.